Why is it so freaking scary? We're born to be in relationships.
But I actually stormed away, cried, and was like, it was very out of character.
I get it. Like, people mess up. And, like, it's okay, Ma. Like, we're going to move on.
My daughter walked into my room. You probably want to repair right now. And I was like, oh my God.
How do you repair when you've gone that step too far? Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Dealing with Feeling podcast. I'm Marc Brackett, founding director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and author of the new book, Dealing with Feeling. I am so excited today to be joined by Dr. Aliza Pressman. Aliza is a world-renowned developmental psychologist. She is a podcaster. She is an author of the New York Times best-selling book, The 5 Principles of Parenting, and also the co-founder of the Mount Sinai Parenting Center. I mean, Lisa is just the world's expert in raising healthy children. And we had a tremendous conversation about the role of emotional intelligence and emotional development and parenting. I love the conversation, and I know you will too. I'd love for you to share your comments about this episode, and please subscribe to our channel so you can learn more about how to deal with your feelings. All right, so Aliza, in 2 minutes or less, tell us who you are.
I am, that's such a deep question. So I'm just going to not think of it as
the professional piece. I will make you talk more about your childhood than you ever wanted to. So
I'm a developmental psychologist, and I am the co-founding director of the Mount Sinai Parenting Center. I'm associate professor of pediatrics, but not pediatrics. It's just the Department of Pediatrics at Mount Sinai. And I have a podcast called Raising Good Humans, and I'm a mother, and I'm newly a wife again.
that's cool.
I'm sure there are other things, but I think that's the basics.
Great. And you're the author of a great book called?
Thank you. The 5 Principles of Parenting.
Yeah.
Your essential guide.
And I thought I want to just jump right into the parenting thing because that's your expertise. And my only wish in life is that I had a parent who wrote a book about parenting instead of a parent who wrote a book about locking herself in the room and yelling and screaming, or a parent who told me to toughen up. Yeah. So now I've disclosed why I'm a psychologist. But
I mean, ask any psychologist why. And the story it was just always so amazing.
Exactly. But let's jump into I just want to jump right into the 5 principles because I've read your book and really loved it.
Thank you.
So I'm going to test your memory of your own work because I don't know about you, but I always forget what I write.
I know, it's awkward. It's true.
So there are 5 principles.
Mm-hmm.
First one?
Relationship, reflection, regulation, rules, and repair.
Great. And so of the 5, my biggest question for you is, and we'll define them in a minute, but where do parents, of the 5 principles, where do you find that parents struggle the most?
Rules and reflection.
Interesting. So it's to say why.
I think reflection feels too light. It feels like you can skip that step. It's annoying for people.
Yeah.
So I think that's my guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think rules are, which I just needed an R word, but I think of them as sort of the umbrella word for limits and boundaries. And I just think those are not super popular, especially for people reading parenting books, because inherent in sort of being curious and interested in what is great for your kids means that you probably buy into having a good relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes setting limits and having boundaries is confusing and hard when you're trying to develop close relationships.
Yeah.
Unless you just have the most A-game upbringing.
And the consistency, I think, is really tough.
Yeah.
because it's like punishment. As someone who's to teach, behaviorism, we know it's like, yeah, punishment will work. However, it only really works when it's harsh and really consistent, and then you're not worried about all the retaliatory behaviors that are going to come out of it later on. And so it doesn't really work in the end.
Right. It's like define works. If you want your kids to be scared of you, it's pretty
Exactly.
great.
Exactly. If you want them to shut up and go to their room,
Yeah.
not necessarily the best thing for healthy development.
Right.
So let's go through the 5.
Okay.
And first one is relationship.
Mhm.
So that means,
I mean, I think that one is sort of truly the umbrella to all of them. It's sort of everything else kind of falls
mhm,
underneath relationship, and just the developing a connection with your child or really anybody. I mean, this is parenting, but this is
life.
relevant to anybody in life. And so having a connection with someone and really seeing who they are and loving and knowing them for who they are is incredibly powerful. I mean, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. Well, I'm not going to be telling you anything you don't know in all of this, but I'll say it anyway, which is we know how powerful relationships are for buffering the impact of so many of the other things that are inevitable in life.
hmm
And so it was important to me to highlight how powerful it was because I do think there's like, we can't have so much control. So parenting can only go so far. But I do think it's pretty brilliant that the most powerful environmental influence on our kids is the parenting environment.
hmm
I think that even if that influence isn't so huge, it's still enough of the pie that it has an impact. And so I think that to me feels heartening because we can actually control ourselves and all this other stuff we have no way of
hmm
controlling. If anybody's learned anything in the last, I mean, since 2020, if not before, we cannot, this is not a gig we can control,
Yeah.
but we can control ourselves. And so investing in our relationships is something that, especially the parent-child relationship, the sort of onus is on us.
It's funny. This morning, I was on a phone call with Bob Waldinger. You may know
Uh-huh.
him, from,
Speaking of relationships being incredibly important.
yeah. And he and I were advisors on a project together. And I was just debriefing, that conversation. And he's like, Mark, when we were walking in the streets, we were in London together. And he's like, you made this joke, like, thanks, Rob, or thanks, Bob, for telling me that relationships matter. And I think, what's interesting to me is that we use that term a lot. And we know relationships matter, but yet people struggle building and maintaining relationships. And like,
Right.
and this is like the thing that's fascinating to me. It's, in my work on emotional intelligence, I'm going to put this out to you because it's something that really hits me hard and I want your help. So, this thing, permission to feel, was my kind of thing. And so I've done research now with tens of thousands of people across the world about the concept and what it means to them. And did you have it? Did you not have it? And only about 2/3 of people say they didn't have like an Uncle Marvin or a feelings mentor coach. And so I present that to parents and I say, what do you think about that? Oh, it's terrible. Terrible. And then I say, well, tell me more. Like, well, what do you think? Do you think if I were to ask your child, would they think of you as being their feelings coach or feelings mentor? And they're like, well, that's not my job. And I'm like, why not? And anyhow, this conversation goes on, which I won't do to you now. But in the end, when I push the parents, they say that time is a problem. They don't have time to be their own child's feelings coach. The second is they say, I haven't dealt with my own shit. Nevertheless, be able to help my kid with theirs. And so then I go back and I say, so your kid might be anxious, depressed, but because you haven't dealt with your stuff, you'd rather not ask them how they're feeling. And I think this in your space, in your 5 principles, it's all about building and maintaining relationships. And so my question to you is, why are parents so afraid of actually building a relationship with their own kid?
I mean, part of it is probably like you just described to me reflection,
Okay.
which is the thing that everybody's rejecting.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
not everybody, but that
Yeah.
that is really hard, which is like it's so hard to pause and reflect on what your experience being loved was, what your experience with your feelings,
Hmm.
what you know to be true about anything, because once you do, so many people are afraid that like you won't be able to you won't like what you see, you won't be able to
Yeah.
bring it back to, you'll just open up floodgates, whatever it is. And so you might reject it consciously or subconsciously, or you think that can't be that meaningful. Like
Hmm.
me having a think about why I seem to lose my temper every time my child looks like they have a feeling.
Hmm.
That that doesn't feel good to think about. So I'd rather not. So I think it's like, and also I think relationships are so vulnerable. I mean, there's the easiest way for my kids to make me miserable is to suggest that I have screwed up
Hmm.
as as a mother. You know what I mean? Like, or to just see them suffering, no matter how much I
Yeah.
know that they're going to be humans in this world who are going to have all the
Hmm.
things. It still pulls at me. So I think relationships are just really hard, and having intention in a relationship means that if you screw up, you failed. Like
Hmm.
there's something so blissful about not putting forth the effort
Hmm.
because then you didn't really fail. So I think it's just really scary, especially if you were never
But that's
taught.
right. So that's the question, though, is like, why is it so freaking scary? If, like, all the developmentalists, right, early childhood psychology, attunement, connection, attachment, it's all been mapped out for us in terms of
Right, like we know.
we're born to be in relationships. We cannot survive without relationships. But yet, is it that no one's taught? Like, is it no one, like, the like, what, the skill piece of it?
I mean, I think part of it is no one's like giving concrete skills. Maybe I think you can teach some of those things, obviously. I think it's also once you know what it feels like, what if that's incredibly off-putting?
Hmm.
Like, even when you think about having a deep conversation with someone, like eventually you avert your eyes or like make a joke or something to alleviate some of the intensity. And if like until you understand that rhythm, it's very
Hmm.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about when you were talking about attunement, I'm thinking like when Ed Tronick did research, and it was like 33% of the time those mother infant dyads were attuned, and the rest of the time was rupture and repair.
Hmm.
But we talk about it as if it's like 90% of the time you're supposed to be
Right.
attuned. And so, like, nobody would like that. That's incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, that might be part of it too, is just like, it's not as hard and uncomfortable as it seems. But when you first maybe start, if you're not used to it, you're like so focused and so
Hmm.
intense. That's exhausting. Like, your body has to like let go even after saying that.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, if you look at divorce rates, which I think you might be familiar with, just
And I am a divorce rate.
and any kind of like breakup, whether it's friendship, workplace related, in my experience, well, where I work, most people are very smart. It's never because they can't do the work. It's mostly because they're very difficult to be around
Yeah.
and they don't regulate well, which is the third one.
Mhm.
So that's obviously the heart of my work right now, which is emotion regulation. But my hunch is that your regulation is bigger than just emotion regulation. It's
I mean, it's so funny because when I first was working on something for a curriculum at Mount Sinai, we were talking about how to talk about regulation to pediatricians so that they could integrate it into the well child visits with their like 2-second visits. And I was thinking about how emotion regulation people in the research, there's like emotion regulation people, and then there's the self regulation people who are thinking more about attention and cognition.
Executive functioning and
And
all that.
yeah, and I think I am talking about all of it and co-regulation
Mm-hmm.
because it's all necessary. And so that's exactly why I said regulation and not emotion regulation or self-regulation
Mm-hmm.
or co-regulation.
Yeah.
I just was like regulation, and then we'll get into the details later.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I do think that um, while that is probably the hardest of these 5 principles, there's buy-in. Like I think people understand that not having capacity to regulate, like not having capacity to regulate your emotions or to even know what your brain is paying attention to, this is prohibitive for really good relationships.
Yeah.
Um, buy-in in that case is high, but actually doing it is so hard. And I mean, I can think of a little tiff I had with my daughter, my teenage daughter, who, when my daughters want to like get to me, they'll say
Mm-hmm.
something, they'll call me a professional parent, or they'll say like,
Mm-hmm.
is that on your Instagram reel? Like they're egging me on. And so I like had a very, and I'm actually pretty good at not having brawls with my kids. Like we might snap at each other, but I don't usually like completely lose it. And I completely lost
Mm.
it. And my daughter's about to go to college in a month, so it's not like a shocking revelation that we would have tension
Yeah.
right before. But I totally like yelled at her, and she was like, that is like, it is mind blowing to me that you can talk about regulation so much and you just like completely
Mm-hmm.
ignored all of the tools that you talk about. And I was like, "Rrr." But I
Yeah.
had no access to them.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't happen to me as often. I have spent quite a bit of time trying to work on that, but it's definitely not like my natural state to just have access to regulation, whether it's where I'm putting my attention
Mm-hmm.
or what's going on with my emotions. I'm definitely, I think for me, relationship reflection, rules, and repair are not my challenge. For me, regulation, without a doubt, has been a,
It's
always.
I mean, in my work, I just say it's life's work because what I needed, the strategies even that you would use when you're a teenager versus now as a mom, as a leader of a center, during a pandemic. I mean, it's just sort of like you think you're like, I remember during the pandemic, I'm like, you got this, Mark, you got this.
Right. Worked your whole life to get to this,
And
being
then it
able to
was
respond.
like, like, okay. Um, well, we're going to jump out of order, but so let's keep going with the um, the 5 principles. We went regulate. So now using your example, you failed, and so
Oh,
you
right. So
probably
we,
you try to repair, or you didn't try to repair.
oh no, I did. But actually, it was funny because I'm pretty good at self compassion, as I'm like really good at it. And it's pretty funny because it's so annoying. That's another thing that it is probably annoying about me is that I'm not as hard on myself as I could be
Mm-hmm.
because that I really, that part of my mindfulness work and like just general
Yeah.
work over time really spoke to me.
Well, it's tricky though, right? Because now I'm thinking, and all of our work can be used against us, right? So, you know,
Especially
yes. And so you're like dysregulated. You're like, mommy's got self compassion. People make mistakes.
mine. And then I'm so annoying.
I'm a work in
So
progress like you are.
I say that all the time. Like I'm like, I just want to make sure you guys know I'm not perfect. And of course, they're like, we've got that. That's very clear. um, but I actually stormed away and I kind of cried and was like, it was very out of character for me to have that big of a brawl with her. and then to storm away, and then to be teary-eyed. I called my husband, and he was like, "What would you tell another parent that was telling you this?" And I would be like, ugh. I would say repair, 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 but it's all bullshit. Excuse my language. Like I've done it. I've done the worst thing. I'm just so
Yeah.
terrible. And anyway, my daughter walked into my room before I even had gotten back to her, and she said, kind of sheepishly, "You probably want to repair right now." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh my God, I love you so much. And I'm so mortified that you came here before I
Uh-huh.
got to you. And I love you so much." And we were fine. What I thought was funny about it is that within 30 seconds, she was telling me a story about something having nothing to do with what we fought about.
Mhm.
Because for her, repair is quite real. She's completely confident that we're good. So we
So the good to
reconnected.
the base. There's a strong base, and
Yeah.
that's an important point though, which
Which was
is
shocking to me because I was really not, I was
yeah.
as emotionally dysregulated as I get.
So there's the repairing and there's the self-compassion piece. Congratulations on your self-compassion. There's the repair piece, where you're, kind of apologizing, maybe asking for forgiveness, moving forward. But where is the I guess this is where all these five principles are not linear; they're circular, and
They're not linear, totally.
so you're going now. Like, how much time do you spend reflecting on why you were triggered and what you might do differently the next time?
I mean, because in that particular case, I was like, I spent quite a bit of time that night thinking like, what is going on with me? But then I also was like, it doesn't take a PhD to know that she's going off to college. She also was saying something about her sister, or to her sister, which, it's like my mama bear came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, then I go into sort of all of the things, and I think back to my childhood experiences, but I don't always do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that would be exhausting.
Yeah.
It was like that was a big example where I was like, I really have some work to do right now because I don't know why I don't want that to happen again. There are different ways I could have handled that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think I guess to reassure every human, like I think all of this work can be quite quick and not so intense,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's intense, and you have to gauge like when it's a throwaway and when it's like, oh, I really need to spend time with this.
I like that, and I also like, that you've. I'm gonna brag about your kids, who I don't know, but that that like your kid, like I think it's okay sometimes for the person who was maybe the receiver of your dysregulation to also just say, I get it. Like, people mess up, and like, it's okay, ma. Like, we're gonna move on, or we're gonna talk about it later, or something. But like, it there's a nice that to me goes back to the relationship piece,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is like the expectation is that the adult is the one that has to do all the work, and I think that that's not really always the case.
I mean, I would like to think that she knows I'm willing to do the work, but
Exactly.
that it's not, I mean, to quote a teenage phrase that drives me crazy, but they say like it's not that deep. And I think for her, because relationship is powerful,
Hmm.
even a moment where you have these brawls, it's not that deep. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to, because we're investing hopefully in this long-term strength of the relationship. And so all the other stuff, of course I'll reflect, of course we're going to
Yeah.
try not to do that again and all the things, but it doesn't have to be that deep.
Hmm. So you're making me think about something that is deep, though,
Okay.
and I haven't. I don't think I've talked about this like on a podcast or in an interview. But since you're now my emotion coach, um,
And
I remember when, and this is now like we're in the kind of young adult phase. I was in my young adult phase of my life. I was not like like people look at me now, they're like, how could you, of course you were the straight A student, you were like perfect SAT scores, you're like, everything was perfect. I'm like, that is not me. I have a very different like persona now as this Yale professor than I did when I was 18, 22. I was like selling skincare with my mother, and literally like running around like with baskets of skincare, and like teaching karate and teaching aerobics, and I was like all over the place. And we're going to erase that. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm so excited to get into that.
Well, anyway, and I share that with you because I had a moment with my mom where I was just getting out of college. I was really unclear about where I wanted to go with my life. I was really struggling with my sexual orientation, with my life, with purpose and meaning, everything. And I have two brothers. Both of them have doctorates. And
My
one
Lord.
PhD in biochemistry, Yale guy who, went off to be a very famous scientist. And I have another brother who is a doctor in Philadelphia. And there's little brother Mark, who is like selling skincare and like doing, teaching karate and teaching step aerobics and I mean whatever else I was doing. And so we're sitting in a coffee shop, my mother and I, because we were
Was
working
this in
together.
the 90s?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my mother looks at me and she says, if you don't go to graduate school, your father and I have determined that you're a loser.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And I lost it. I mean, in the restaurant, I told my mother to go F herself. And then she ran out of the restaurant, and then she was driving in circles in the parking lot, like yelling and screaming that she was going to bang into a pole. And then I, of course, went to rescue my mother. Like,
Mm.
we may be going too deep into this. But my point here, which is now I'm distracted by my own memory of my own story, is I don't even know my point now. I'm so lost in
Well,
my own emotional memory that
well, when I'm thinking about that memory,
tell me what you're thinking.
I would like to say what would make sense to me is that, first of all, I mean, it's kind of cool that you felt safe enough. I'm not saying like screaming whatever you
Yeah,
screamed is charming,
yeah,
but like what a terrible thing was said to an
yeah,
emerging adult. So I think you had a great reaction that feels like you felt safe that you could
yeah,
say that.
yeah,
What's sad is that, of course, you internalized it, and here
yeah.
you are today. But
I know where I was going.
yeah,
So where I was going was like, unlike a typical argument that my mother and I would have, this one was like serious, you know, like
mhm,
she shamed me, and
yeah,
I wasn't putting up with it. And then my mother, because she was not very emotionally skilled, then she had a breakdown and was like screaming and crying, and then I'm like, mom,
and
mom, mom. But my question for you is for parents who, like, how do you repair when you've gone that step too far?
where no, I mean, I think if you call into question who your child is versus, just a normal fight of just like whatever, we know the difference. I think the repair that's called for is because sometimes I think repair can just be reconnection.
Mm-hmm.
Like you literally just share a laugh and you don't even have to say the formal apologies and make a whole thing, but it's like, are we back?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I think if you're shaming and like you're like, I'm calling into question your worth as a
Yes.
human to me as your parent, then you need to have a real sit down and
Yeah.
say, that was because I panicked and I
Mm-hmm.
put all of my own stuff onto how you would move through the world because I was worried about your happiness. Like I actually thought this is the only way for you to be happy and successful.
Mm-hmm.
I put that fear on you and I shamed you because that was an easier out. And I love you for exactly who you are, not in any way for what you're doing. And that was like on me. I'm so sorry. Like that is
Yeah.
I mean, that
And,
isn't necessary.
and you think about, like where using my mother as an example was at in terms of her dysregulation kind of. I mean, she was triggered by, and you're right. I mean, in her heart, I know I want my kid to be successful. It's like
Yes, she just wanted you to have all the
yeah,
shots that your brothers had or
exactly.
whatever it
She
was.
just didn't have the skill to communicate it. And so she figured the way she'll wake me up is like hit me over the head.
Yeah,
We did recover from that, by the way. Um,
I'm so glad.
but uh, but it's amazing to me how those moments of shame like are indelible, little scars in your brain.
Mhm.
And I think we can probably be more prevention focused so we don't do that. But I think my point here really also was that, like, I know I've done that in my own relationship. I've said things that I just cannot believe I've said
Ugh.
to the person I love the most. I haven't done it in probably a decade because I've really, really, really worked on myself. I've thought it, but I haven't, it doesn't come out. Um,
But that's amazing.
yeah, no, totally. I mean, I've made a commitment that's like my goal in life is not to make other people feel bad about themselves. Like, what's the purpose of that? It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of psychology work and blah blah blah. But my question for you is for parents who have really blanked up, in your experience, do you believe that it is possible to fully repair and move on?
I really believe it is. I don't believe that it's easy, and I do believe that there are little scars that need more support.
Mm-hmm.
I I think I think of it as there is a point at which you can't repair or shouldn't
Yeah.
even repair, but within like the range of what is, I mean, if we're just concrete about it, it's like, is it sprained? Is it sprained? Is it stretched? Is it
Yeah.
strained? Or is it broken?
Correct.
And so I think we have to think about those things. And if it's really broken and it
Yeah.
can't be repaired, you have to kind of spend your days trying to get as close to a working limb as you can while knowing that it's never going to be quite the
Yeah.
same. But I think there's a lot of wiggle room there. I really do.
I do
Because
too.
we're wired for connection. We're so our kids so desperately want to be seen and loved for who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to give us many chances. Sadly, they'll give us so many chances. And so I think in that case, it's on us to make sure that we aren't just like being told that we're forgiven. We're not
Mm-hmm.
just like expecting our kids to make us feel better that they're okay, but actually that they feel worthy.
And I'm thinking about Harriet Lerner's work on apologizing, and that, and I'm just thinking that just because you forgive and move forward doesn't mean you accept the behavior.
Rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's also on part of the reason why I think rules are so important isn't just because like we're teaching our kids to have appropriate boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
limits to keep emotionally and physically safe. I actually think it's so that they know how to do it with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So that they know that in those cases where the apology and the forgiveness was there, they still know that doesn't mean that I'm going to accept repeated harm.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. In our work, and Ruler is the name of our program that's in schools around the world. And,
Including my daughter's school.
awesome. And we have something we call the Emotional Intelligence Charter, which is not rules per se, it's kind of an agreement about how we want to feel in our classroom. And so, just so you know, we've extended this to families, and we ask families to build
Love
their emotional intelligence charter. So the kid goes home with these little instructions, and over the weekend or at dinner, they have these conversations about how do we want to feel as a family? What emotions do we want to experience at home? And people come up with, well, happy is the easy one, but a lot of people say connected, respected is a big one in middle school. And then they have conversations. Well, what does respect look like for you versus me? Well, for mommy, it's like, when I tell you to come down for dinner, come down for dinner. And for the teenager, it's like, can you please knock on my door before you just barge in on me? And it's a really interesting, I think, way of creating rules or,
Yeah,
or guidelines for behavior, but it's emotion first.
I love that.
It's
I
been
also think that's great practice for families who might not have otherwise had those conversations.
right.
You've just like handed them a little bit of like dinner table conversation that's
Yeah.
going to inevitably open them up or terrify them.
Yeah. So we're going to twist a little bit. Um, You've been a parenting expert for 20 something years. You've done 1.5 million workshops. You've done podcasts that are very popular. You've got best-selling books. And my question for you is more around the why. And so, like, why did you decide to dedicate your life to helping parents be better at what they do?
The deeper why is probably I'm the grandchild of Holocaust survivors, and I was genuinely riveted and from almost like from a distance at how like resilience was talked about in my family, and I just like couldn't understand how you can come from such terrible circumstances and then raise kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely observed some interesting, flawed things that would be inevitable. And I think are pretty consistent when you study the children of.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that was one thing. And that I was just watching all the time. And then there was this bizarre kind of deification of parents in the households because is that a word?
I just was nodding. I'm not sure, but it's
You
okay.
get it. You know what the thing about
All I
I
was
feel like
thinking was that you're probably smarter than I am. So.
no, I just feel like in psychology we just make things up anyway, and then it's just a word.
Yeah.
Um, but there was this sort of acknowledgement that because the grown-ups had been through so much, they were heroic,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no questioning of anything. But then, you could skip a generation and there's questions. So that was part of it. By the way, my grandfather is still, a few blocks away. He's 101 and I'll see
That's
him later.
awesome.
So it's kind of incredible. Then, and I watched like there are three different kids have three wildly different emotional outcomes. So that was one thing. And the second thing is that my mother was a teacher my entire life and worked with kids, and her whole life was about kids. And and my father was a scientist. And so there was no question that I was going to be immersed in something
Mm-hmm.
related.
Science and kids. There you go.
Yeah. So it was sort of obvious. And then when I went to graduate school, I kind of fell in love with I was going to go into clinical. And then I just fell in love with attachment and like Bowlby and Ainsworth and like the traditional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, this is so interesting, like how you come to be who you are and how that shapes you. And I just thought it was cool intellectually. And then I got pregnant in graduate school. And then I was like, there's so much that we don't know in research, but there's like a lot we also do know
Mm-hmm.
that parents may not know. And there's a lot of noise out there, and I just was trying to make sense of it all. I was like, I'm going to figure this out and then I'm going to tell everybody about it,
Nice.
which is insane. But I was like, that's why I wanted to work in a hospital, because I was like, oh, pediatricians talk to parents more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And I kind of just felt like I can't imagine. Plus, my mother said, don't work with kids when you have kids. So part of it was just, she was like, maybe there's a way to work with adults instead, but about kids. So I think there were many different things, but mostly I think I watched growing up kind of the wild ride of looking at adult experiences, temperament in the child, temperament of the adult, and like what soup that makes. And I
Mm-hmm.
was just kind of fascinated. What I don't love is like what a terrible downer of a cocktail conversation it is to be like a parenting expert,
Mm-hmm.
because what does that even mean? It's not like a real thing. Like we don't really know.
Yeah.
There's so much, like whenever everybody's like, well, what exactly should I do in this
Right.
case?
What's the regulation strategy?
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, well, I mean, you could try this or this or this and see what works. Like, it's not, there aren't scripts. Like, we can give scripts because they might help, like, exercise the muscles. But I didn't want people to feel like, I remember early when I did parent groups, they're really mom groups mostly, and
Mm-hmm.
now they're expanded. But I was in New York City and I would bump into people on the street who would apologize to me because it was like past their kid's bedtime, but they were like
Mm-hmm.
pushing a stroller and they had a pacifier in their mouth, but they were 4 or like something. And they thought I cared. Like they thought I was
Right.
like,
You can
you're
judge
such a
them.
bad parent. Yeah. And so I then sort of realized there's like a problem with how we're delivering information, because
Mm-hmm.
it's it's making people potentially more anxious. And so I just like, I still struggle with that. Like how much is helpful and how much makes people think, wait a second, there's a right way to do this. If I just keep reading, I'll find it.
And to be honest, we both know there are many parenting experts out there who have the answers, and they're like, 3 steps to this and 4 steps
Yeah.
to that. And I think it's a bit overrated.
Of
Um,
course, it's so silly because it's like, we're not. That's
right.
what I want to say to all those posts. Sure,
Exactly.
maybe.
Now, in terms of like how, you spent all these years and you write this book, and you came up with, I mean, obviously you wanted to play with the R's, which I do the same thing. At Ruler, like the skills of emotional intelligence had to be RULER. I mean, it was the only acronym I could find for the
You're like,
skills,
I'm going
really.
to find a word.
Yes. And then I got punished for that, like ruler, or like you're, they're hitting people with a ruler. I'm like,
Right.
all right, let's take a break.
We gotta be a little easier on.
People can think of, we can measure your success and your emotional intelligence. But for yours, let me try to get it right. Relationship,
Hmm.
reflection,
Hmm.
regulation,
Hmm.
repair,
Hmm.
rules.
Yes.
Thank you. And so those are 5 interrelated, distinct concepts. Just for people who are listening, who hopefully will read your book and learn more, how do these 5 things, like, how do you, like, what do you do with those 5 things? How do you play with them? And is it that you're thinking, for example, are you thinking on a daily, weekly basis, my relationship with my kid is important. Knowing what the rules are is critical. Spending time reflecting is going to be helpful for all of us. Being a model of regulation is helpful. Um,
And
if
repairing
I
it
mess
might
up,
be
I'm gonna, it's okay to, to move to manage, apologize and move on. Like, how does it work?
like, how is it operationalized?
Yeah.
So, yes, to what you just said broadly, I think I was like, what really matters in developmental literature? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what really matters to your parenting? It's going to be temperament and just the values of the household, which is kind of nothing we can do anything about.
Yeah.
And then the sort of fundamentals of the research that actually is in the control of the parent. And I did talk a little bit about skills that you can build in our, that we can build in our kids to support all of these things. But so I looked at it in 2 ways. One is just sort of the page to stage of like how the research translates in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Like Um, if your teenager comes in and starts getting angry at you because they really wanted to go to a party and you've said that they have to do something else, or who knows, you gave them too early of a curfew. um, I I think just from a system, you would just think, okay, well, I definitely need to breathe for a second
Mm-hmm.
and regulate, because otherwise this will turn into a huge fight, which will undermine the relationship. So I need to think about, like, through reflection, like, what's my goal here?
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the rules? Like, why do I care about this rule? I think that rules should matter for emotional and physical safety of the unit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that party is dangerous, or the time that it ends is dangerous, or whatever your reasoning is, or you have to be with grandpa. So I think, yes, all those things can go through your mind very quickly because you're fluent at thinking about this. And then you've kind of entered the conversation with some kind of intention, understanding what you're trying to get out of it, understanding what your child needs, and you're responding with your thinking instead
Mm-hmm.
of just reacting. And I actually think it's that easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through, a gazillion scenarios just to sort of show how easy it
Mm-hmm.
is. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of did sample responses where I put in parentheses, like, reflection, regulation, rules, repair, just to
Yeah.
make it so that it's fluent. And the reason that I wanted these big concepts was because it's the work of this is hard work, because it's just hard to be a person, but it's easy in terms of content. Like, you're not reacting any differently whether you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
that party, or whether you're talking about homework, or whether you're talking about whether or not you can. I'm trying to have a blue cup versus a red cup. Like, there's so many
Mm-hmm.
different things that are coming our way, and I think if we practice over and over those kinds of responses, our relationships get stronger. And also, just generally speaking, building relationship over time, just separate from all of this, makes all the other stuff easier.
Nice.
And that's kind of how I think of it.
I like
And I
that.
also just like my shorthand version, which I'm so sick of saying because I know that it's annoying and hokey, but I'm gonna say it anyway. But I really do think, when you think all feelings are welcome, all behaviors are not, you
Mm-hmm.
just know, like, I'm I'm here for all of it. I'm not, but that doesn't mean that I'm not setting limits and boundaries around what's acceptable
It's funny
for
because
all of
I have a saying that behavior does not equal emotion, which is it's a different meaning actually than yours, but
Yeah,
they're related. Because I think parents, the kid is I'm screaming and yelling, and they assume the kid is angry when the kid might be
right.
feeling shame.
You have no idea,
Yeah, no
right?
idea.
I think the point, though, is, like, whatever is happening, you'll figure that out through reflection and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that doesn't mean that, because I think we've gotten into this sort of, everybody's so afraid of messing with the relationship that they're afraid of the
Giving
setting the
feedback about the
limit.
behavior.
Yeah, like, behaviors, like, people are like, "Oh, but it's just communication, so I won't do anything about the behavior because I don't wanna mess with the." And I think that's where we've gone a little off the rails in the
I agree.
culture,
I heard a
right?
story. One of my colleagues' um, daughter is a nanny this summer for a family, and obviously nobody know who this person is, but the family, they both work full time, and she has two children, and they're each taking shifts because it's like a 12-hour day. They want somebody to be with their kids, but the kids have like literally, if they want a bag of chips, they can eat the bag of chips. If they want the 4-year-old wants to take a poop on the floor, he takes a poop on the floor. I'm not kidding. This is what I'm
No, I
talking.
believe you. I
And there
believe
was one where the 4-year-old wanted to go on a bicycle ride, and the daughter was like, "Where's your helmet?" "I don't have a helmet." And she wasn't sure if he did or didn't, but she didn't want him to ride the bike without the helmet. And then the mother came home, and the kid was screaming, "She didn't let me ride my bike. She didn't let me ride my bike." And and then they had this conversation. Well, and the girl said, "Well, he didn't have a helmet, and I didn't want to. Are you trying to shame my child? Are,
Oh,
are you
that is
are you telling me I'm a bad parent? You would have a
ugh.
field day with these people, but
But I think that's exactly that story represents, I think, like the terrible misunderstanding about what shame even is and
uh,
about what we're talking about when we say connect. And it's like off the rails now. So you have these situations like I can't tell you how many times people say, like, well, I don't want to shame him, but he's, and it's like he doesn't want to use the helmet. And it's like, that's not shaming. Or like he hit his brother and I don't want to shame him by telling him that's unacceptable, but I don't want him to do it again. I'm like, that's telling someone they can't hit is not shaming them.
right.
That is just telling them something that is important for them to know. Like, so I think
Yeah.
and I think it's like the mistranslation, another
Hmm.
word that I'm just throwing out fun words. Um, but I do think like there was an article in the Wall Street Journal this week that was something along the lines of like goodbye gentle parenting, hello FAFO, which is F around and find out.
Oh.
And I think it's like I think people are rebelling against this idea that you can't have rules and limits and the sort of the permissiveness of what that
Hmm.
has become. And I kind of feel like being like, this is not new. This is just like the pendulum going back and
Hmm.
forth between authoritarian and permissive. But
Right.
like the thing that is healthy is neither.
Right.
But
Exactly.
of course, you're gonna go to the extremes when you're exhausted and you're like, I can't deal with this anymore. But I think that idea of like, are you shaming him for not like having his helmet to ride the
Yeah.
bike is such a great example of like, we really lost the plot. And maybe some of that is in the delivery, like maybe from all of the experts, there has still been poor translation. I'm not sure, but I think it's a problem, and who wants to be around those people?
I know.
Like,
No.
those
The
children as
kids,
they
they're
grow
they're
up.
they're miserable. But the kids are miserable in their job because it's like, they don't want to be around that. And the one girl's like, I don't want to clean up this poop off the floor. Like, he should go to the toilet bowl.
Yeah,
Anyhow, all right. So I have two more questions, and then we can see each other again.
uh,
Um, the
in
last
a week.
exactly. So to throw out a fancy word, the penultimate question.
Mm,
That is a real word, by the
mm. Yeah, yeah,
way.
and you used it correctly, which sometimes doesn't happen.
So it really gets at kind of our last few minutes, which is that I've been involved in the field of emotional intelligence for about 30 years. Um, the world of mindfulness and well-being, positive psychology, all the things that you know about and write about, it really kind of blossomed around 1990, and now it's, 35 years in. Um, and yet the research is not great in terms of our children's mental health and well-being and anxiety and depression. We've all done, little self-congratulatory. I've done good work in the world and created, I think, a powerful intervention. We've both written, I think, books that are meaningful and powerful, as of many other people. So what is it going to take for us to create the shift that is so desperately needed to support children's healthy development?
Ugh. I mean, it's I don't know. I think it's gonna take making sure that we figure out how to take care of adults because there were like I think about how many people come to talk to me about the pervasive anxiety in the kids, but I also think about how anxious the adults are around the
Hmm.
kids. And like, I don't know any kid who could possibly look at the adults in their life and feel like, oh, things are going to be fine.
Hmm.
So I think we have to figure out the adults in the world in order to support our kids.
Hmm.
And because also every adult also deserves to have like a little more ease in the world. But also, I wish I had an answer to this. it's like, this is a beautiful field. And also, we have to be moderate in our consumption.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we let this like really good stuff turn into
But it's a no, it's
counterproductive.
no, it's well, it becomes noise, just like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think for people who love consuming information, as long as you do so with curiosity and like, this is cool, great. But if you're feeling like every time I listen to another conversation, or every time I read another book, or every time I read another article, I switch gears, I change
Mm-hmm.
my tune, I don't trust myself, I'm confused, I feel worse about myself, I question myself. That to me says pick a couple things that feel good to you and then just like stop investigating for a
Mm-hmm.
little bit.
I like that.
That doesn't really answer your question, but it's the
No, but
best I can.
it's a nice recommendation, and I like it. All right, last question. Let's just take a nice long inhale and an exhale. Just chill out a little bit.
Oh, that's the answer.
That helps.
Everybody should just breathe.
So I'm going to ask you to imagine a world where the 5 principles are embedded in everyone's brain. All the skills that we work on in emotional intelligence are taught from preschool to high school and also reinforced when people become adults and parents. What is different about the world we live in?
Well, for starters, people will do the thing that Robert Waldinger, did I pronounce his name correctly, is hoping for, which is they'll have better relationships. And in having those relationships, I'm hoping that in that amazing fantasy land, we then are less focused on all of our grievances and all of the things that are just so wrong, that we start to come a little closer together. Because from where I think we sit right now, it's very hard to imagine how anybody's taking a breath and really seeing other people, or the behavior of the adults in the world just wouldn't be what it is right now. And then we wouldn't have, from that, kids who are rightfully panicking. And then separately, I would say, as much as I'm not like yay technology, I think kids and adults need to be off of technology enough during the day and get their sleep and get their exercise and have social connection. But I think they would
Mm-hmm.
more if we spent less time screaming about how horrible it is and more time connecting with each other
Mm-hmm.
and more time breathing and less time talking about everything that's destroying us and more time just like doing the things that are better for us.
Nice. Thank you.
Maybe.
We'll do
Or not.
another. We should be able to do a self-esteem section. So, Aliza with an I, can you please tell people how they can get access to your information?
Very easily. um, you can listen to my podcast, Raising Good Humans, which is not the name of my book, which is the 5 Principles of Parenting. And I'm on Instagram, Raising Good Humans Podcast, where I try not to say these are the 3 scripts that you can use. And uh, and Mount Sinai, we have a website, mountsinaiparentingcenter.org, that has a ton of free resources for pediatricians and for parents, for the 0 to 5 set. I have a Substack. I really try to just reach people wherever they want to be reached. I don't think everybody needs all of that. I think that would be annoying. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just sort of like, how do you like to feel supported? How can I support? But those are the different ways.
Great. Well, thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for all your work. I can't wait to talk to you more about it.